All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Do You Have Pictures Today podcast. I am Hannah. I am here with Dr. Lisa. Hello, Dr. Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dude,
I'm so
thank you so
excited
much
to
for
be
coming on.
here.
I'm stoked to have you here. I'm super stoked. And before I hit record, I took a moment because Lisa, you just hit 200,000 followers on Instagram this morning.
Woo!
Yeah.
That took 3 years. Actually, like maybe even 4 because I've lost track at this point.
Oh, man. Well, congratulations.
I feel like I've lost track of time. I guess it has been 4 years.
Yeah. And what's crazy too is the content of which and the knowledge that you have in the realm of running, because you are a DPT. Like you can go on your page and it's just this library of helpful information. So it goes many kudos to you that like you are a freaking superstar in the world of running. Because my gosh.
Thank you. I really
Of
wish
course.
Instagram put a search bar on people's like pages. I think that would be amazing because I don't know, like that needs to be a thing in 2025. So, because then if you search like hip flexors or shin splints, then all of my posts could come up. Like, how cool would that be?
Ooh, that'd be awesome. Oh my God. Yeah. Heck yeah. Instagram, if you are listening, big brother. Let's get that dialed in. Oh man. All right. So, just to give folks that are listening a bit of background about you, can you talk to me about what a DPT is and how you got into your current profession as a DPT?
Yeah, so DPT is a doctorate of physical therapy. I got into my profession, actually, I started in high school. I live in Richmond, Virginia. I went to high school in Richmond, and basically, I didn't want to take physics in high school. So I was like, how can I get around this? And I decided to take this sports medicine class at a tech center. And when people think of tech centers, they think of like doing like hair, fixing cars. Like, I'm sure there's a better name for the things I'm saying, but you know what I'm saying? It's more of like the trades. Um,
Mm,
but
yeah.
there was a sports medicine class, and I was like, oh, this sounds like really cool. Like, this would be really interesting. So, my senior year, I went to a different high school for half the day. Every single day, I learned about the body. I learned more of like the AT, like the athletic training side, but I just knew like, I mean, the whole class was called sports medicine. So I knew I was really interested in that sort of like career field. And there's only so many careers in the sports medicine world. Like I could be a PA, I could be a PT, an AT, a personal trainer, like a certified strength and conditioning coach. Those were really like the main career paths. So I started as an AT in undergrad as my major. I quickly learned I didn't love it. I didn't love like the idea. I mean, I'm like not diagnosed, but diagnosed with ADHD per me. And I was just like, I have to like stare at someone and watch them play until they get injured. Like I was way too distracted. So it was just not like you're on the field and you're like basically have to watch every single play and watch how someone is injured and then be able to like run out on the field and help them. And I like the idea of helping someone, but I did not like the idea of paying attention for hours. So I was like, all right, let me like take a little bit of a different turn in my path for undergrad and go the PT route. So that's really how I ended up being more of like a sports med major, kinesiology major. I don't even remember what my major was at this point. And I went into grad school for PT.
Okay. And is an AT an athletic trainer?
Yeah, AT is an athletic trainer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. They are the ones that are on kind of the side and rush in. And would you say that they're like the more first responders in the athletic? Oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure. And like the thing was, I really liked being in the clinic as an athletic training student, but I didn't like being on the field. And I was like, and I quickly learned this because it was very like, Lisa, pay attention. Like, Lisa, like,
Mm-hmm.
Lisa, go get them water. It was just very like, Lisa, stretch their hamstring. And I was like, I really just would prefer to be in the clinic. And I learned that where it's like, just let's piece together what's going on. Let's still be able to treat this athlete or this person and be able to help them, but it wasn't so much the first responding. But I definitely enjoyed pieces of being an athletic training student, but didn't enjoy like the waiting for the injury and like it was really the paying attention part that got
Yeah.
me.
That would be that would be difficult for sure. And so moving forward in more the PT realm, a DPT, you're basically a doctor of physical therapy. So not basically, you are. So from that perspective, is it more just the fascination with the human body and like kind of what makes it tick that was the lure for you? Would you
Yeah,
say?
yeah, for sure. I think it was especially like going down not just like the PT realm, but also like the sports medicine path of PT. I think I find it really, first of all, the body's just really, really interesting. I love figuring out like puzzles. I love piecing together things, and that's really what a PT does. And just being able to like see things at a different angle. I've always been that person where they're like, Lisa, I need like, and I need to see what you think about this because I feel like I'm seeing it at, the wrong angle. I'm always able to look at things at like a different angle. I've been told that all my life. So I really have enjoyed like being able to piece things together, being able to help someone get back to, their baseline or their goals. And I think I went the realm more of like the sports medicine, specifically got thrown into like treating runners, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I really have enjoyed like how the sedentary person that comes to PT has a very different work ethic than a runner that comes to PT, or an athlete that's playing like high school sports comes to PT. So I've really enjoyed more of like the sports medicine side of it.
Mm-hmm. And those are obviously two very different people. If there's someone who's sedentary that's like going through an injury and trying to just get back to normal life versus an athlete who's trying to get back to performing and moving their body for the love of moving their body, I definitely could see there being a very large difference there in just the motivation to get back at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So because you also are a runner, which I think is so like super cool. Because I know when I first got into running and like, the first introduction to running, shit starts to hurt. Like things are like, ooh, this is not normal. You have to get into that groove. So for you, did this profession of being a DPT and running kind of come together in parallel, or did you just explore your love for running a bit afterwards?
Yeah, so I played softball in college, and after college, you have to go to 3 years of grad school for PT. So when I was in grad school, it's like a very crazy schedule. It's like 16 hours of studying basically every single day. So I have like, 20 to 30 minutes to move my body, and I just decided to pick up running. But again, it was like 20, 30 minutes, very like casual running, didn't think anything of it. And then when I graduated from PT school, I moved to DC. And that's when I was working in a sports medicine clinic. I was treating mostly runners. And luckily, I had really good mentorship. So when I was treating these runners, I was able to rely on my other colleagues to help me. And I also had like amazing trails and like views in DC for running.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I really started getting into running more because, I was just kind of like, all right, if I'm going to help these runners, like I should probably be running myself so I can like start to understand it a little bit more and like basically throw myself into it. So that was really how I started treating runners. And then it kind of escalated from there when I moved back to Richmond.
That makes sense. I think the overlooking the 30 minutes of just moving your body just to like get out there, that's the one of the greatest things about running is it requires minimal 30 minutes. You can go just yourself, clear your
Oh,
head
yeah. It was the
for
best.
sure.
And
Yeah.
like it was just, I didn't even, I guess you could say I used it to stay in shape, but I really just used it to like relieve stress and like not go into a mental breakdown with all the things I had to do.
Yeah. 16 hours is gnarly. Holy shit.
Yeah. I remember like if I was so busy that I like basically didn't run, workout, anything for 2 weeks. And I would just like call my mom crying. The first thing she would say is, have you gone for a run or like worked out? And I'd be like, no. And she'd be like, okay, why don't you go get outside and like, it's okay if you have to take 20, 30 minutes and you're not necessarily studying, like just try to clear your head and try to make that part of your routine. And it really did help my mental,
Yeah.
just like status throughout PT school because it was very stressful.
Yeah. I could so see that. Kudos to your mom too.
I know. I just call her, I can't do this. She'd be like, all right, let's take a deep breath.
My mom said something. She goes, have you gone outside?
Yeah.
Like, no, I haven't.
No,
Go
I haven't
outside.
seen daylight in days, actually.
Just a hermit. Oh, goodness. So one of the things I noticed that you created was the Complete Runners Club. And I know what this is because I went super nerdy into the deep dive. But for listeners who don't know, can you tell me what the Complete Runners Club is?
Yeah, it's actually it has progressed over the past couple years. So it is a membership for runners that want to improve their performance. So it includes strength workouts for runners, it includes the warm-ups, the cool downs, it includes travel workouts, it includes some mini rehab programs. It includes a course on how to breathe when you're running, core work. I mean, it literally has everything. I say it's like everything you need to be doing outside of running. And then you can also have the membership that includes a custom running program. So one of the memberships, more of like the downgrade membership, is strength only, and the other membership includes the custom running program. So I realized there was a really big gap in kind of like the next step after I'd rehab a runner. And because it was like, all right, like I'm back to running. Like I really don't want this to come back. Like, what do I do? And the answer is not do your rehab exercises forever. I mean, that's just not like, sure, continue to do your rehab exercises, focus on areas of weakness. But I was learning that because I was sending them to my strength only program, the Runners Complete program, not to be confused with the Complete Runners Club. But I have a strength only program that I was sending them to. But then I started to realize that these, they say like training errors, which is basically like if you increase your mileage too fast, or if your intensity when you're running is way too high, or something is basically off with your training plan, then those training errors can cause, or basically cause 60% of running injuries. And I was like, all right, I need to like fill this gap, because it's one thing if a runner is strong, but it's another thing if they're increasing their mileage way too fast. They're going out way too fast. Their training plan is like way too intense for them. It doesn't meet them where they're at. So that's when I started to really think about like, what do my runners need in order to not just prevent injuries, but also thrive with their running and be able to hit their goals. So that's what I came up with the Complete Runners Club. The other thing I wanted to do was not charge someone an arm and a leg for a custom training plan. So, you know how, some people work really well working one-on-one with a run coach. They want to be able to talk to them on Zoom and text them, and that's great. But there's a lot of other runners that just want to be like, tell me what to do, tell me what runs I can do. And I'm in contact with them through more of like a messenger. I don't meet with them on like Zoom or computer or anything like that, but they have access to a PT. They have access to a run coach. So it works really, really well.
Yeah. That's crazy. That really does speak for itself. The Complete Runners Club.
Yeah.
Damn.
And so if you get like the strength and a custom training program, which it is not a PDF, it is me making your training plan based, someone will fill out an assessment. It'll be like, what's your mileage at? What are your goals? What do you have a race coming up? Like, what do you want to work on the next couple months? And then I create the training plan off of that. So it really is a custom plan. It has worked really, really well with just, because then they'll match that with the strength workouts that I give them. And it's almost like, they're just on their way to being able to see their goals and actually feel like they're achievable.
Yeah. I do want to call out that this probably doesn't even seem that much of a thing for you, but like you noticed a gap and you tried to fill it with like some sort of, with this program, which has kind of an all-encompassing. That's really great. You mentioned breathing. like a breathing guide when you're running.
Mm-hmm.
My husband is super into being like breathing only through his nose when he's running. Is that what you're, just to bring two very potentially different things together? When you talk about breathing while you're running, is it more like mindful breathing?
It is more using your diaphragm when you're breathing.
Oh.
Yeah, a little bit different. It is more, so I always say it's like 360 breathing versus belly breathing or chest breathing. So it's not necessarily like only breathe through your nose. I have asthma, so I would legitimately die if I tried to do that. It is also not like, let's tape your mouth and breathe. Like, it's nothing like that. It's more so a lot of runners will breathe with their chest. Like, it's called the accessory muscles for breathing, or they only breathe, poking their belly out and then bringing it back in. But this teaches more of like the 360 breathing, which means you're breathing. It's like a calming breathing technique a lot of people use if they have anxiety, but basically it's how we should all be breathing. And it's basically when you inhale, you should be expanding your belly, your sides, and your back. And I say sides, like think your ribs should be expanding in order to expand your lungs, and your back should be expanding. And this is going to help because if the diaphragm's off, your pelvis is going to be off, which means your hips are going to be off, your pelvic floor is going to be off, your back's going to be off. Your core is going to be off. Like everything's going to pretty much be off if your diaphragm isn't working like it should. So this really teaches you how to breathe using your diaphragm, which is, your primary respiratory muscle. So that's what I mean in terms of breathing.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, two very different things.
But that's okay, because I know a lot of people have like, different ways of breathing, and there's different strategies. But the main thing that you would want to focus on first before you think about what do I do with my nose and my mouth is to learn how to try to avoid using your accessory muscles when you're breathing as like your first instinct. If you're doing a sprint and you're, a sprinter running a 400-meter and you're on the last leg of it, you're going to start to use your accessory muscles when you're breathing. But if, at the end of a long run, at the end of a hard workout, at the end of a marathon, you're going to start to use those accessory muscles when you're breathing because you're tired. But it shouldn't be right when the race starts, you're automatically starting to use them.
I got you. Man, okay, you've turned a new leaf. You've turned a new leaf for me because that's really interesting. I had never really put that together. But yeah, it makes sense. If your body's a whole orchestra of muscles.
Yeah. I took a class on pelvic floor, and this is how I learned about it, because I was like, this is going to be great for pelvic floor. And then it was like, and this is how it's connected to the hip, and this is how it's connected to the core and breathing. And I was like, oh, that is a whole new world I did not know about. So I really started to explore it, and I was like, oh, wow. Like, this is not just like breathe when you're running. Don't forget to breathe. This is very like, there's a lot more that goes into it just in order to have your body in sync.
Yeah. From your perspective, can you talk about the importance of incorporating strength training into your running regime? And then also like kind of your thoughts as well if are runners always supposed to be hybrid athletes, and kind of what your thoughts are there?
Yeah, the term hybrid athlete is quite confusing, if I'm being honest, because the way I see it is every runner should be strength training, even if it's, just a little bit each week, or even if you're in the gym for an hour a couple times a week, like every single runner should be strength training. And like those are kind of like the rules that like the government even gives us. Like you should be doing cardio and you should be doing strength training for your health, mental health, cardiovascular health, musculoskeletal system. So when we're putting the term hybrid athlete on it, we're labeling it, which I hate, because a label just creates like, you're this or you're this. And it's like, well, I'm not a hybrid athlete. I'm a runner who strength trains. And that's technically also a hybrid athlete. Like it just gets a little bit more confusing. But I think the way I've seen it is I think a hybrid athlete is more so somebody who it's almost like prioritizes strength training over running. And I mean, this is just what I see. A runner usually prioritizes running and then also strength trains.
There's like a first love.
Depends on what label giving yourself, which also be careful with labels, but it's like that's the way I see it, because a lot of the hybrid athletes are doing, they're maxing out with squats, or they're doing 4 to 6, reps of squats, and they're going 80 to 90% of their max weight. And they're really hyper focusing on the hypertrophy side of strength training, versus when our goal revolves around running. Yes, we should be strength training, but focusing on like the maxing outside of strength training isn't necessary. Like, we don't have to be doing that. We don't have to be lifting our body weight times 3 in a deadlift. Like, if we want to, great, but most runners want to get in and out of the gym. They don't want to be calculating certain weight that they need to be lifting and all that. They want to get in and out of the gym, and they want their workouts to help their running, keep them pain free, improve their running, maybe address areas of weakness. They don't necessarily want it to get bulkier or to really focus on like the hypertrophy side. So I just think it's a little confusing.
I agree.
On social media.
Yeah. I am completely agree with you on the fact that I think it's, if you want to call someone a hybrid athlete, I think that's totally fine. For me, where I struggle, and I can only speak for myself, is I sometimes don't want to be in the weight room. Like I want to be out running. I'm only lifting weights to make sure and maintain like my healthy legs, my body, all of that is in tune. Mm-hmm. So I think this hybrid athlete term gets kind of slapped around, where it's like, if you're a runner, you're really a hybrid athlete. And
yeah, exactly.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. And I was just curious, because strength training is super important when you're running. Just non-credential person saying this, but you just learn, right? You learn through injuries. You learn by talking to people like such as yourself, that it is such a crucial part of staying healthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely confusing, because then I think about my best friend who does CrossFit, and she also runs throughout the week a couple miles. And I'm like, well, what is she? Like, what would you label her? Like, why? I just don't understand why we're necessarily trying to label everything, because then it creates a divide of like, well, a lot of people think, well, if I'm a runner, I should only be running. And it's like, no. You should also be strength training, because that's going to keep you strong. It's going to keep you from getting injured, really decrease your risk for injury, allow you to run faster. Like, there's so many benefits of it, but I don't know. There's just so many little things that I'm like, why are we making this so complicated?
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, if you want to get super, you also should be doing like some sort of stretching and maybe some yoga. Like, what is that? A quadruple athlete? Like,
it's really like, I don't know. I mean, most of the people that follow me are like, I call myself a runner. Like, like I label myself as a runner, and they strength train. And the goals usually revolve around running. And I guess you could say it's like, what's the main thing you're focusing on? That's what you could like label yourself as. And with like what is it called? High rocks?
Yes, high rocks.
So that's becoming really popular. So that's where people consider themselves hybrid athletes. And it's like, honestly, at the end of the day, like, keep doing you and keep moving your body. It doesn't even matter what you label yourself as.
Basically, if you're a runner, you can get your ass into get your ass into the gym. You don't have to be called a hybrid athlete. There's different levels of strength training, but runner does not equal hybrid athlete unless you want it to.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And if you want to go to the gym and you want to lift heavy weight and focus on really increasing your weight, and you want to, focus on the hypertrophy side of strength training, you can do that and still run marathons. Like, it's really like, what do you want to do? Most runners do not want to do that, though. I've learned. Most runners do not. Most runners don't enjoy strength training, or they don't love it. So it's like, it just depends. Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I like it. Okay. Couple more questions about running. Well, this whole episode's about running, so I don't know what I was talking about that. So in your opinion, what is actually better? Is it better to do a warm up or a cool down after a run? Is it, if you had to choose?
I think it'd be better to do a warm up, because the reason behind it is because I mean, if you have to pick, I'm a PT, so I'm like, why do we have to pick? But,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's not really like ideal for your body to go from sleeping and then 10 minutes later go to running. But it's
Hmm.
also not ideal for your body to go from like running and 10 minutes later to go into sitting
Yeah.
for 8 hours. So I think it kind of just depends. And the thing about like a warm up and a cool down is it doesn't have to take forever.
Yeah.
Like I would say mine on average are like 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes five if I'm feeling really stiff, but they're usually just a couple minutes. And then after a run, my routine is usually to try to walk a little bit. Like I'll usually like get my dogs, go for a walk. Um, WALK. I hope they don't hear that. And then and then I might go through some stretches, but also the thing about your stretches after a run is they don't have to be directly after. Like
Mm.
if you are like, Lisa, I have 10 minutes to get breakfast, get coffee, and then sit at my desk after a run, I'd be like, okay, great, let's do that. And then maybe, you are working and you have a little break and you can go into some stretches maybe an hour after you've been working. Like you can do it throughout the day or you can do it at the end of the day. It's just not ideal for your joints to go from like stiff to an activity and then an activity to stiff. Your body is not going to like that at all. So I think it kind of just depends on your routine, really.
Hmm. For someone who works as a desk job, let's say they're a runner and then they also sit at a desk, so two very large contrasting things.
Mhm.
What are tips they can include into their life to maybe lessen the impact of switching into both of those modes?
Yeah, I mean, I I am a virtual PT, so I sit a lot,
Mm.
um, which is very different from when I worked outpatient ortho. Like I was walking around and like I'm basically running around like my head was cut off. But it was like it's just very different. So I completely understand if you're like I sit a lot throughout the day. One thing that I do is I definitely get up and try to walk a little bit. Like, even if I'm like, okay, in an hour, I'm going to go get a snack, which requires me to walk down the stairs and back up, just a little bit of movement. Because ideally, you don't want to be in one position for a really long period of time. So that could mean that, you know, if you're working, you might stand for like 15 minutes every couple hours, or you might sit with your legs cross-legged and then you might sit with them down, or you might just try to move a little bit throughout the day. You're walking to go get your lunch and then you're walking to the bathroom. Just try to keep your body so it's not in the same position for an hour or two, because even if you're like locked in with what you're focusing on, you can still change your posture a little bit. You can still cross your legs. You can still, change the way that you're sitting. So there's a couple different things that you can do, but it's not ideal to be like, I'm going to sit for 8 hours straight. Like
God,
I mean, no one wants to
no
do
one,
that.
no one wants that.
That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it is. Because you mentioned you're a virtual PT, so you sit. I
Mhm.
have timer on my phone where like every 45 minutes, it's just a light beep where it's like, hey, switch to sit stand or stand up for a couple minutes, touch your
Yep.
toes.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're just like I mean, I drink like a lot of liquids. Like I feel like I'm like a fish. So I'm like always going to the bathroom. So I'm like I get it. Like a little bit of a walk to the bathroom, a little bit of a walk downstairs to get more water, a little bit of a walk to go get a snack. Like breaking your day up is actually really beneficial.
Hmm. Okay, I love it. So this is interesting, but it actually was a really high requested question. What are your thoughts, expertise on adequate tapering for a race? What is the most optimal time to officially start tapering for a race?
Research, I mean, I guess we're talking about a marathon.
Yeah, we'll just say a marathon for
Okay.
this instance.
I mean, it's 2 to 3 weeks. I think the biggest thing is that it's more so like, what do you do in the 2 to 3 weeks versus the time? Because that whole idea is that, yes, you're decreasing your mileage, but you want to keep your intensity the same. So if your intensity is 80% easier effort runs, 20% medium, moderate to higher intensity runs, then you want to still keep that intensity even as your mileage drops. I've done a 3 week taper for my first marathon. I did a 2 week taper for my second. I preferred the 2-week taper because anxiety.
Yeah.
3 weeks felt like a very long time to wait around, but I know some of my runners prefer a 3-week taper, and I think it definitely just depends on, what is your experience at, what does your body prefer? Like, I mean, I can't sit still. I feel like I've said that a lot throughout this podcast, so I kind of sound crazy, but I am one that's always on the go. So I can't, like, me waiting around 3 weeks it was torture. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if research says that I can still do a 2-week taper or even a 10-day taper, some people do that and still have the same results, then I'm going to do that. As long as I keep my intensity up, still do my speed workout during taper, still do my marathon pace runs during taper, then, I'm going to be fine for race day.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I did a podcast episode on this where I deep dived into the research. So maybe I can send that to you, and then
Yeah, I'll link it. 100% I'll link it. Because I am also someone who has a hard time sitting still. And so, but I've also been very told by a lot of people, like, 2 weeks is not enough. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I know people that are very adamant on, having their body in the most recovered state for their race. So, okay, 2 to 3 weeks. Got
I'm
it.
running Boston this year, and I'm doing a 2-week taper. Just
Nice.
so I've done a 3-week, I've done a 2-week. So it's like, what's the third one going to be? And it's going to be a 2-week.
Got you. I got you. So this is a controversial question. Is running actually bad for your knees?
No. Good news. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of doctors who still think this. I hear like a lot of stories, good and bad, of like runners who went to see a PT, runners who went to see a doctor, went to see a podiatrist, chiro, like all these different healthcare professions. And so I hear a lot of stories. And the one thing that I hear that is actually terrifying is that runners will be like, oh, you have pain when you're running, just stop running. And that is not the answer. And if you hear that, especially if you have like knee pain and they're like, well, running's just going to make it worse. Well, there's things that we can do. Like, it definitely depends on the injury, obviously, but there's things that we can do. Maybe you have to modify the activity as you rehab, and then you can build up your mileage again. It shouldn't be a black and white answer of, well, just stop running. Like, you just need to stop running. That's not an acceptable answer nowadays. There's so much research on it. So no, running is not bad for your knees. It's actually shown to be really healthy for your cartilage, create stronger cartilage with the appropriate dosage. I'm not talking about, very high increases in weekly mileage with the appropriate dosage. But I always say running's not bad for your knees, but you do need strong knees to run.
Mm-hmm. Back to that strength training thing you talked about.
Yep.
Because you mentioned it entirely, because there's probably other things going on than just knee pain.
Yeah, I mean, if you have ankle pain and Achilles tendonitis, the doctor's not normally going to be like, okay, just stop running. Like, that's very rare. So it's like, why is that a thing when it's knee pain? Like, it's still, it's something PTC every single day. So it's not, unless you need surgery and you need to go down that route, completely different. But most common running injuries that happen at the knees, you can modify your activity and you can rehab and get back to running.
Yeah. I just feel like it's a wives' tale that just never kind of went away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Carbon plated shoes. What are your thoughts on these bad boys?
Sure is hard to run slow in them.
Have you ran in carbon plated shoes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like them just like most people, but they actually have caused a huge increase in injuries. So I think it's, history repeats itself. Let's go back in time when barefoot shoes were really common and everyone was like, we got to wear the barefoot shoes. This is how we're supposed to run. This is how we're naturally going to run. And then everyone basically ditched their shoes and then went to barefoot shoes. And there was a huge increase in injuries because it's just like a really big change and it's really sudden. And
Mm.
when we're going from, our normal like Brooks, Asics, Adidas, New Balance shoes that have cushion and they're soft and they're just so comfy, and then we go to carbon plated shoes that have a stiffer sole, it's again a really big change. And it's like, it's still okay to run in barefoot shoes and it's still okay to do carbon plated shoes, but it just can't be like an all or nothing sort of thing. Like
Mm.
we can't go from 0 mileage in carbon plated shoes to now 100% of mileage in carbon plated shoes, or 80% of mileage in carbon plated shoes. Like, it needs to be a slower adaptation into these carbon plated shoes versus it being like, I'm going to do every long run in carbon plated shoes. Like,
Yeah.
it's our body never does well with like sudden changes, especially if it's like all or nothing. And I do see that as being the big reason that there's a lot of running or foot and ankle injuries from carbon plated shoes, because people will be like, oh, I just wore them for like my speed workout and my long run and like my medium long run, and I'm like, oh, okay, like we just went 0 to 100
Mm-hmm.
really fast because you like the shoe. And a lot of
Right.
people love these carbon plated shoes. I love them myself, but it's not a thing where I'm wearing them for most of my mileage. I'm very picky with when I wear them.
Mm. So, from your perspective, is there usually a recommended transition plan for when you're trying out new shoes? Is it once a week or?
Yeah, definitely like once a week. It should be like definitely a shorter run, like or maybe like you even change your shoes. Like if you're in the midst of marathon training, you don't really have shorter runs. So maybe you do like your warm up in your, let's say New Balance 1080s, and then you transition into your Adidas Adios Pro 4 carbon plated shoes, and then you do your speed workout, and then you change back into your New Balance 1080s. Like, you are not just saying, okay, I'm going to go do like an 8 miler in these carbon plated shoes. Like, especially if you're not used to carbon plated shoes, if you have a history of foot and ankle injuries, like, I would really suggest doing like a really slow transition into them. Um, or even like try them for a couple marathon pace miles at the end of your medium long run, like, or strides or something like that. Like, it needs to be a slow transition. And a lot of people, I mean, a lot of runners don't understand what slow means. So I would say like
Yeah.
no more than like 20% of your mileage for like the first week.
Okay. Okay. And on the topic of shoes as well, because I think a lot of people don't, they take a shoe recommendation and they don't actually get like their foot looked at, or they don't get how they run looked at. And so they'll just slap on a pair of shoes. And so if someone's new to running or wants to invest more money in like a good pair of running shoes, like what would you recommend their first steps to be when trying to find the perfect shoe?
I would do research on it. I mean, there's so many shoes out there,
Oh,
and a
many.
lot of them, I mean, it's just hard to make a decision based off of like, if you scroll on social media, you're like, oh, that shoe looks cool. Oh, I like that shoe. Oh, everyone says that shoe's great. And I'm not saying that they're lying, but it just depends on your foot. It depends on your gait. Like, there's so many things that go into picking a shoe that works well for you. So I would do your research, see based off your goals, your weekly mileage, like, is your goal to race a 5K or is your goal to run a marathon? Like, your shoe is going to be very different. Or like, do you need a shoe for your long runs for your marathon training? Like, the shoe you pick needs to be based on your goals, and it also needs to be comfortable for you. I find a lot of people pick a shoe based off of looks and based off of popularity, but I mean, that's why they're like, I love like a good mint green shoe. Like, and New Balance just came out with the 1080s, and luckily I love the 1080s, but I'm just like, wow, I would have fallen for this even if I thought this was the most uncomfortable shoe. I would have been like, wow, this is really hard to turn away. But it is really important that, do your research, find a couple shoes that other people have reviewed or said that they're a really good shoe, and then you could go into like a local running store, try like a bunch on, like, try, just say, hey, I want to try a variety of shoes on. Like, it might take a while and you might be like, oh, I feel bad that I'm making this person like go back and forth getting me new
Mm-hmm.
shoes, but it's so worth it to try on different shoes. And then you can start to feel and see how these shoes are very different compared to each other.
Yeah. On the topic of shoes, for your perspective, from how many shoes you should have in your rotation, because I feel like shoes can be such an overwhelming topic. What type you should have for running, what type you should have for like strength training, what type you should have for insert any activity here. Do you think there should be, should you be lifting in your running shoes, or should you
No.
be okay?
Save them for
No.
running.
So would that be maybe a different shoe or even barefoot? Personally, I sometimes lift barefoot.
Yeah.
But I was
Yeah,
curious.
I would do barefoot. I would do barefoot shoes. I have the Noble shoes and I have barefoot shoes. Like, just don't wear your running shoes, because the thing is, like, running shoes only have so many miles on them and you don't want to waste it on lifting or
Yeah.
walking, the dog. Like, I'm very cautious about what shoes I wear at what activity, because you really do want to save your running shoes for running.
Okay. And then last question on shoes. From your perspective, I feel that there has been a bit of an increase in the talk about heel drop in shoes and how it can correlate to Achilles tendonitis. Is that actually something, like the higher the heel drop, the easier it is on your Achilles? Is that actually a valid correlation?
Yeah, but it's not a crazy stat. Like, it's
Okay.
not like, oh, you have Achilles tendonitis because you're in a low drop shoe. Like, it's like, it also okay, there's so many things that go into it, because it also depends, like, what other shoes are in your rotation. Do you have like a Brooks Ghost that's a 12 millimeter drop, and then you have like an Ultra that's a 0 drop, and you're switching between those two because that's a really big change? Or is it like you're sticking around like a Hoka and a New Balance that's like a 4 to 6 millimeter drop? So it definitely depends, like, what other shoes are you wearing? I mean, there's just so many things that go into an injury. So I wouldn't say it's like the shoe's fault most of the time, unless
Yeah.
you are making a really big change in your shoes.
Okay. But for someone who does have Achilles tendonitis, would it be better? Like, is it worth looking into a higher heel drop shoe?
Yeah, but I mean, they also make these really cheap heel lifts that you can just insert into
That's true
your
too.
shoe. So it's, you know, those are like a couple bucks on Amazon. So it depends on the severity of the Achilles tendonitis too, and like the Achilles pain. But I mean, yeah, I mean, if you're like, okay, well, I need new shoes anyways, I'd be like, okay, let's look into like a New Balance or a Saucony or a Brooks shoe that's more like the 8 to 12 millimeter drop.
I got you. Okay. Well, thank you for talking to me all about shoes.
Oh, I love talking about shoes. I have
There's so many.
so many pairs of running shoes, and it's like, it's just a lot. Sometimes when I'm running, I'm like, this feels just like this other shoe. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, no, it does not. Like, it takes a while to break in a shoe, especially like, I don't know, this time compared to like 2 years ago, I feel like it just takes way longer.
I'm currently on the A6 Gel Nimbus. Those are really like those, because there's also a trail running alternative that's really good. And that's like, I'm very loyal to that shoe. But I do, based on this conversation, with inspiration enough to like start looking at other shoes to, especially strength training. But okay, on to the section of rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Dun dun dun. All right. What is the most interesting way you've seen someone warm up, like before a run?
Probably my husband.
Oh, nice.
He does like 3 high knees, kicks his heel to his butt, and he's out the door. And I'm like, what are we doing? So probably that. And that's actually an improvement from when we first started dating. I'm like, can you please warm up? He's like, does it just to probably make me happy? And I'm like, that was a 10-second warm up. Maybe we do something a little bit different. So yeah, I'm like, what did that just do? Like, what are we? Are we warming up for football or like what's going on here?
Warming up for life.
Yeah, literally. It's pretty bad. I posted a reel with him doing it. Like it was 6 seconds long, by the way.
Love that.
So if you look on my feed, you'll see me doing a talkover like of a dynamic warm up, and I'm like, this is what my husband does, and then this is how you're supposed to do it. So you should definitely find that reel because
Okay.
it's actually really funny. Yeah, he's funny. So I was just like, this is actually hilarious.
I will definitely look for that. Oh man, if you could let me see. If you could instantly become an expert at one skill, what would it be?
One skill. Oh man. I would say, like, are we talking about running?
Anything.
I would say being a pilot. I don't know why that's really
Oh,
in my mind a lot recently, probably because of all these
plane crashes.
But I feel like I like to be control, but I'm not necessarily like a controlling person. It's just more so to make me like feel like I don't know, have control of the situation. So I've been flying a lot recently and I'm like, wow, I would actually love to be a pilot and know what the heck is going on right now.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah.
Lisa, we need you at the cockpit.
I don't know why this has like been coming up a lot recently. Like one of my one-on-one clients works for like Garmin Aviation and I'm just like asking him questions and he's probably like, can we get to my rehab?
There are times where like I know what you're talking about when there's super heavy turbulence. You're like, what is going on?
Like,
and you're at the mercy of just.
And they're probably up there just like, meh.
Yeah, we hit a cloud.
I'm like, I need to be like them. So that's why I keep saying like, it would be really cool to be a pilot. Like all the science behind it too.
Mm.
It's just, that's super, super random though for me.
Hey, I like it. I definitely see where you're coming from. All right. If you were to live as a fictional character for a day, who would it be?
I don't know. Who would you pick?
Fictional character for a day? I'd probably want to do like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, like something where you can fly.
Yeah. Like I'd want to be like the arm, like just like deny bullets with my arms and just take off. Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, that's basically what a PT is. Just helping everyone, flying from runner to runner. That's how I feel throughout the day. I do think it would be really cool to fly. I mean, I don't know why this is. I'm not going back to school, if anyone is wondering.
Sounds like there's some unfinished business up in the air territory.
No, I think it would actually be terrifying to fly.
I think so too, but for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe what's like a good fictional pilot or just a pilot? Maybe that's fictional or non-fictional. You want to be a pilot?
Isn't there one like JJ the jet plane?
Yes, you want to be an airplane?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know why everything's
I love where this is going. I love where this is going.
I promise I love when my feet are on the ground.
Oh, this is great. Okay.
Anyways.
What is one thing you want listeners to know about you?
Well, as you can probably tell, I'm actually really goofy. I'm probably like, it's just funny because on social media, I feel like I obviously know a lot about running and I take my education very seriously, but it's like kind of hard to show your personality on social media when you're trying to educate. So all my friends know I'm super, super goofy. Like I'm super silly. I love to laugh. And I feel like sometimes it's hard to see that on social media.
I got you.
Like I can't really be like cracking jokes and being like, are you in pain? Like I feel like it's just like, there's a time and a place to be silly. And it really is something I've like struggled with. And sometimes I've been trying to show more of my personality, but it can be a little bit difficult when
Yeah.
like I don't consider myself an influencer. I'm not just like walking around rating things or sharing my opinion on everything. So it's like I'm most of the time educating, and that can
Yeah.
be a little bit tricky to be like showing my personality. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually like all my friends would say I'm like super silly, super goofy.
Yeah. Well, I got to see some of it as you saying you wanted to be JJ the jet plane.
I know. And
That was
now I feel
awesome.
like once I show it, people are going to be like, oh my God, she's actually insane.
No, I think it's cool to have, yes, you can educate, but like when you think about being like in school and like a teacher, like teachers that had like that fun, sparky personality were the ones that you connected with. So,
Right. And the problem, I mean, a lot of the problem is that I have like 6 seconds to educate somebody on Instagram. So it's
mhm,
like definitely more of a time crunch, which is why
yeah,
I've really enjoyed more of like the podcasting or like long form YouTube videos where I feel like I'm can just kind of relax a little bit and not have to like get an entire sentence in 3 seconds, you know?
yeah,
But yeah, I'm gonna
I
try.
got you.
I'm gonna try really hard to show more of my personality.
I love it. I love it. Okay, last question. What are 3 things you're grateful for?
So it's kind of funny. I know these are rapid fire questions, and I'm making them very
Yeah,
long winded.
that's
But
okay.
every day I journal, and every morning I always write 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things I'm excited for, and 3 things I manifest. So
Ooh.
today in my journal, I wrote,
Oh, let's see. I love that. I love that prompt.
I am grateful for my friends and my family. I'm grateful that I can work from home with a flexible schedule. And I'm
Mm.
grateful for my husband and my dogs.
Aw,
I
that's
guess they're
perfect.
family, so that didn't really.
That's okay. You can spotlight family members.
I'm also grateful that it's snowing outside right now because we like never get snow.
No, really, you're in Virginia?
Well, it's not really sticking, but it's just
Oh,
usually too warm.
got you.
But it's always fun to have a little snow day.
Yeah, I asked like that. I was like some sort of weather woman. In Virginia, there's not snow. In California, no clue what's going on in the rest of the country in regards to weather. Jeez, Louise.
It's kind of like Richmond, Virginia is like kind of an up and down roller coaster in terms of the weather. Like last week it was like 70 degrees and then the next day it was like 30. So, yeah. It's great.
Okay,
I'm sick all the time.
but I did look this up the other day. Maybe this could help brighten folks' day. 26 more days until daylight savings time.
Thank the Lord because I am an early riser and I am so
Same.
sick of it. I'm like recently like cuz I'm training for Boston, I have to get my runs in. I'm like I sometimes feel like I'm just waiting around for 7 o'clock on the dot because then it's light out. But I'm just so excited for that. I love when it's light out in the morning,
Me
like
too.
early.
Just the energy is different. It's just a
Yes.
little bit more. Mm.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that was the podcast. You crushed it. Thank you so much for hopping on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, I'm going to stop hitting record.